The dying stranger collapsed near their well changed everything for Temperance Whitmore and her 3 children on that storm-torn night in 1882. Lightning split the Kansas sky like God's own judgment as Tempe hurried her family toward their rickety homestead. Rain turned the earth to mud beneath their worn boots. 8-year-old Moses spotted him first. A dark shape crumpled against the wooden fence posts, blood mixing with rainwater in the dirt. "Mama, there's a man," Tempe's heart seized. She pulled Moses closer, her other children pressing behind her. Ezekiel, 16 and already carrying a man's weight on his shoulders, stepped forward. Charity, 12 and fierce as her mother, clutched a rusted lantern. The stranger's chest rose and fell in shallow gasps. Fine leather boots, silver belt buckle, clothes cut from cloth that cost more than the Whitmores saw in a year. His dark hair was matted with blood and rain. "They can't know," he mumbled through cracked lips. "The will. Father's money won't save anyone now." Tempe knelt beside him. Her hands, skilled from years of birthing babies and tending wounds, found the bullet hole in his shoulder. Clean through, missing bone. He might live if infection didn't take him. If she helped him, thunder crashed overhead. In the morning, the banker would come. Samuel Wickham with his cold eyes and foreclosure papers. They had nothing left to pay. Nothing left to give. "Mama, we can't feed another mouth." Ezekiel's voice cut through the storm. "Look at him. Those clothes, that horse gear. He's trouble." The stranger's horse stood nearby, a magnificent bay mare worth more than their entire farm. Saddle leather tooled with silver, bridle work that spoke of wealth beyond their understanding. Tempe touched the man's burning forehead. Fever would kill him by dawn without care. Care that would cost them their last jar of honey, their final. Stores of clean bandages, the whiskey she'd been saving for emergencies. This was an emergency, just not theirs. "Charity, get the door." Moses, clear the table. "Mama," Ezekiel caught her arm. "We got nothing. Come morning, we might be sleeping in that storm ourselves." She looked at her oldest boy, his father's eyes, dark and steady. His father's stubborn jaw. Marcus had been a good man, dead 3 years now from a farming accident that left them with nothing but debt and determination. "We don't abandon folks to die, Ezekiel. No matter what it costs us." They carried the stranger inside. His weight surprised her, solid muscle beneath those fine clothes. Working man's hands despite the expensive gear. A puzzle wrapped in blood. And rain. Tempe cut away his shirt. The wound was clean but deep. She worked by lamplight while her children watched. Moses held bandages. Charity boiled water. Ezekiel stood guard at the window, jaw tight with worry. "Don't let them find me," the stranger whispered as consciousness flickered. "Santos, he'll kill anyone who helped." Tempe's hands stilled. Killer's name on dying lips. She looked at her children, their faces pale in the lamplight. Too late now. They'd already chosen. Horse hooves pounded through the storm. Tempe's blood went cold. No one rode in weather like this unless driven by necessity or greed. Get away from the windows. Sheriff Cornelius Hayes burst through their door without knocking. Water streamed from his hat brim. Behind him came Samuel Wickham, the banker, his pale face pinched with distaste. "Temperance." Hayes' eyes found the wounded man immediately. "Heard you might have company. Found him dying in the storm." She kept her voice steady. "Christian duty to help." Wickham stepped closer to the table. His gaze took in the expensive clothes, the fine boots. This man's got money. Could be a reward for information about him. Could be trouble for harboring him, Hayes added. His hand rested on his gun belt. Been talk of rustlers, missing persons. People like you shouldn't get involved in white folks' business. The words hit like a slap. Tempe straightened, every inch of her 5-foot frame radiating dignity. "This man was bleeding out in my yard." I won't apologize for showing mercy. Hayes studied the stranger's face. Mexican features. Could be one of them Esperanza riders. That family's got enemies. Esperanza. Tempe knew the name. Everyone in Kansas Territory knew it. Cattle empire stretching from here to Colorado. Money. And power beyond imagination. You best hope he dies quiet, Hayes continued. Folks who cross the wrong people tend to disappear. Their families too. Wickham pulled out folded papers. Speaking of family, these are for you. Foreclosure notice. You got till Friday to settle your debts. 3 days. Tempe took the papers with steady hands. 3 days to find money they didn't have. Course, if you were to cooperate with the law regarding your guest, the bank might see fit to extend your deadline. The offer hung in the air like poison. Turn over the dying man for a few more weeks of poverty. Trade mercy for time. Get out of my house. Hayes' eyes hardened. You're making a mistake, Temperance. Dangerous mistake for a woman alone with children. I'm not alone. Ezekiel stepped beside his mother. Charity joined him. Even little Moses moved closer, small hands clenched in fists. The lawmen left without another word. Their horses disappeared into the storm, leaving only the sound of rain and the stranger's labored breathing. Tempe returned to her patient. The fever was breaking. Color returned to his cheeks. He would live through the night. Maybe that was enough. Maybe mercy didn't require guarantees. Mama, Charity whispered. What if they're right? What if he brings trouble? Tempe smoothed her daughter's hair. Outside, thunder rolled across the prairie like the sound of approaching judgment. Then we'll face it together, baby girl. We'll face it together. The stranger's eyes opened as dawn painted the windows gray. His gaze found Tempe's face, focused and aware for the first time. Don't let them find me, he said again, clearer now, please. But Tempe wondered if it was already too late. If saving this man had doomed them all. 3 weeks passed before the stranger could sit up without help. He called himself Joaquin, claimed to be a traveling ranch hand. His hands told different stories. No calluses from rope work, no scars from branding irons. Fingers that knew books. Better than cattle. He spoke English with careful precision, Spanish with educated grace. When he thought nobody watched, his posture straightened into something aristocratic. Tempe noticed everything. She'd learned to read men's secrets in the years since Marcus died. Joaquin carried mysteries in his silence. He paid for his keep. With knowledge. Taught Ezekiel mathematics that made the boy's eyes light up. Numbers that danced across paper. Equations that unlocked the world's hidden patterns. Ezekiel had never seen learning beyond basic reading and writing. You could be an engineer, Joaquin told him one evening. Build bridges. Design buildings. Ezekiel's hand stilled on his slate. Dreams were dangerous things for boys who looked like him. Dreams got you hurt when the world reminded you of your place. But Joaquin's eyes held no mockery, only certainty. Charity found her own teacher in the stranger. He watched her gentle the wild mustang she'd discovered, offered quiet suggestions. The horse responded to his presence, ears forward instead of pinned back. You have good hands, he told her. Patient hands. She glowed under the praise. 12 years old, and already knowing the world would try to make her small. Here was a man who saw her gifts instead of her limitations. Moses received. Carved animals from Joaquin's knife. Horses with flowing manes, cattle with curved horns, birds with spread wings, each piece detailed enough to seem alive. Were you rich once? Moses asked one afternoon. His child's eyes saw past pretense. Joaquin's knife stilled against the wood. Rich means different things to different people. The boy accepted this answer. Children understood that adults carried wounds too deep for simple explanations. Tempe watched these exchanges from the corners of her vision. Joaquin fit into their rhythm too easily. Made himself necessary. Dangerous territory for a woman who'd learned not to depend on temporary men. But her heart betrayed her anyway. The way he held Moses when nightmares came. How he listened to Charity's dreams without judgment. His patience with Ezekiel's questions. The careful distance he maintained with her. Respect threading through every interaction. At night, she found herself stealing glances. His profile against firelight. The way he moved through her kitchen, mindful of space and boundaries. When he smiled, rare and genuine, something in her chest loosened. 3 years of widowhood had taught her self-reliance. This felt like forgetting those lessons. The telegram arrived on a Tuesday. Jeremiah Coltrane brought it from town, his face twisted with suspicion. A neighbor who'd never shown kindness before. Addressed to J. Esperanza, he said, watching. Joaquin's reaction. Clerk thought it might be for your guest. Joaquin barely glanced at the yellow paper. Wrong man. Common name in these parts. But Tempe saw the way his shoulders tensed. How his hand moved toward the telegram before he stopped himself. Coltrane lingered in their doorway. Funny thing, having a Mexican staying with your family. People talk. People should mind their own business, Tempe replied. Your business affects all of us. Brings the wrong kind of attention. After he left, Tempe confronted Joaquin. He sat at their table, the telegram unopened, beside his coffee cup. You planning to read that? Nothing to do with me. She studied his face. The careful blankness told her everything. What are you? Running from? Joaquin's eyes met hers. Dark brown, flecked with gold. Honest eyes she'd thought. Now she saw the walls behind them. Some things are better left buried. But buried things had a way of digging themselves up. The next morning brought Charity's screams from the barn. They found her on the ground, blood streaming from a gash on her arm. The Mustang reared above her, wild-eyed and panicked. Something had spooked him badly. Joaquin moved without thinking. No hesitation, no fear. He caught the horse's lead rope, voice dropping to calm authority. Spanish words. Gentle but commanding. The Mustang settled under his touch. Then he knelt beside Charity. His hands found the wound, assessed the damage with practiced skill. Too practiced for a ranch hand. Get me clean cloth and whiskey, he ordered. This needs proper cleaning. Tempe watched him work. Confident movements, medical knowledge that went beyond basic first aid. He cleaned the wound with surgical precision, wrapped it with professional care. You'll have a scar, he told Charity. But no lasting damage. Where did you learn that? Tempe asked. Joaquin's hands stilled. The careful mask slipped, revealing something underneath. Education, training, a past that didn't match his story. Picked up things here and there. That wasn't picking up things. That was training. Silence stretched between them. The walls were crumbling, and they both knew it. Who are you, really? Joaquin looked at her children. Ezekiel watching with suspicious eyes. Charity cradling her bandaged arm. Moses building a fort from carved animals. I'm someone who brought trouble to your door. The telegram? He nodded toward the unopened message. My father's business partner. He's looking for me. Your father. Don Cornelius Esperanza. The name hit like thunder. Tempe felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Esperanza. Cattle empire. Millions of acres, thousands of head. Power that stretched across 3 territories. And she'd been harboring the air. You lied to us. Ezekiel's voice cut through the silence. After everything Mama sacrificed, I never meant to stay this long, but you did stay. Tempe's voice held steady despite the chaos in her chest. Why? Joaquin's eyes found hers. In them she saw loneliness that matched her own. A man as lost as she'd been before her children gave her purpose. Because I never had a family before. The admission hung in the air, raw and honest and dangerous. Your father's looking for you? He thinks I'm dead. Miguel Santos, his business partner, shot me. Left me to die in a ditch 3 miles from here. Why? Because I found out he's been stealing from the ranch, killing off anyone who might inherit if something happened to my father. The pieces fell into place. The expensive clothes, the fine horse, the mysterious telegram. The way Santos's men had been asking questions in town. They know you're here. Not yet, but they're getting close. Tempe looked at her children. Ezekiel's anger, Charity's confusion, Moses's innocent trust. She'd brought this danger into their home. Fed it, nursed it back to health, let it teach her children and carve toys and make her heart remember what it felt like to hope. What do you want from us? Nothing. I'll leave tonight. Disappear. You never saw me. And Santos? He'll have no reason to bother you once I'm gone. Tempe studied his face. The careful distance he maintained, even now. The way he held himself apart, ready to sacrifice his own safety for theirs. What if we don't want you to? Go? Something flickered in his eyes. Hope quickly suppressed. This isn't your fight. Maybe it is now. She thought of her children's faces when they worked with Joaquin. The light in Ezekiel's eyes when he solved complex equations. Charity's confidence with horses. Moses's laughter when new toys appeared. The stranger had given them gifts they couldn't return. Knowledge, dreams, the dangerous possibility that the world might hold more than struggle and survival. Stay, she said quietly. Tempe, stay and fight. Whatever comes, we'll face it together. Joaquin's careful mask finally cracked. Behind it she saw a man who'd been running too long, hiding too deep. A man who'd forgotten what it meant to belong somewhere. You don't understand what you're asking. I understand enough. She reached for his hand. Calloused now from weeks of farm work, but still carrying the softness of a privileged life. He didn't pull away. We saved your life for a reason. Maybe. This is it. Outside, the wind picked up. Storm clouds gathered on the horizon. Change coming whether they wanted it or not. Joaquin squeezed her hand once, then let go. Then God help us all. Father Miguel Torres arrived on the first Sunday of October, his monthly visit bringing more than communion. The priest's weathered face went pale when he saw Joaquin helping Moses with his reading at the kitchen table. Joaquin Esperanza. The words fell like stones into still water. Your father thinks you're dead. Joaquin's hand stilled. On the boy's primer. 3 weeks of careful pretense shattered in an instant. Father Torres. He stood slowly, formal distance replacing the easy warmth he'd shown with the children. I didn't expect to see you here. Don Cornelius has been searching for months. Hired every tracker from here to Colorado. He believes Miguel Santos when Santos claims you died in that canyon. Tempe watched the exchange from her place by the stove. The priest's eyes held knowledge that chilled her. Blood. What else does Santos claim? That bandits killed you. That he barely escaped with his own life. Father Torres removed his hat, hands trembling slightly. But 2 of your cousins died in the past month. Accidents, Santos calls them. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Charity looked up from her sewing. Ezekiel set down his book. Even Moses sensed the shift in atmosphere. Eduardo and Raphael. Eduardo fell from his horse, broke his neck. Raphael ate bad meat, took fever and died. The priest's voice carried doubt thick as winter mud. Convenient deaths for a man who stands to inherit if the bloodline runs dry. Joaquin's jaw tightened. Family names spoken with the weight of grief and suspicion. Santos has been asking. Questions in town, Father Torres continued. About wounded strangers. About families who might be hiding someone. Tempe's stomach clenched. The net was closing. How long do we have? She asked. The priest turned to her, surprise flickering across his features, as if he'd expected her to demand Joaquin leave immediately. His men were in Dodge City yesterday. Maybe a day, maybe 2 before they reach here. Ezekiel stood abruptly, chair scraping against worn floorboards. He needs to go, now, before he gets us all killed. Ezekiel. Tempe's voice carried warning. No, Mama, look at what's happening. People are dying. You think Santos won't kill us too if it serves his purpose? The boy's fear crackled through the air. 16 years old and already understanding how the world worked. How people who looked like them disappeared when they crossed the wrong boundaries. Charity spoke up from her corner. He's family now. We don't abandon family. He's not family. He's been lying to us from the beginning. Moses looked between his siblings, confusion creasing his young features. Adult tensions he couldn't grasp, danger he couldn't comprehend. Joaquin moved toward the door. The boys. Right, I should have left weeks ago. Running won't solve this, Tempe said quietly. It'll keep you alive, will it? Men like Santos don't leave loose ends. We know his name now. We know what he's done. The truth settled over them like dust. After a windstorm, they'd crossed a line without knowing it. Stepped into a world where knowledge itself was dangerous. Father Torres cleared his throat. There might be another way. All eyes turned to him. The priest reached into his coat, withdrew a leather portfolio thick with documents. Your father's will. He asked me to keep it safe while he searched for you. He handed the papers to Joaquin. You should read it. Joaquin's hands shook as he untied the leather strings. Pages of legal text, written in careful script. His eyes scanned the dense language, stopped on certain passages. What does it say? Tempe asked. He's leaving everything to me. The ranch, the cattle, the land holdings. Joaquin's voice carried disbelief. All of it. That's why Santos wants you dead, Father Torres said. With you gone, he becomes the old man's closest advisor. Inherits by default when Don Cornelius dies, but I'm alive, for now. Silence stretched between them. Outside, wind rattled the windows. Storm weather building on the horizon. Tempe studied Joaquin's face. The weight of inheritance sat heavy on his shoulders. Millions of acres, thousands of cattle, an empire built on blood and ambition. What do you want? She asked. Joaquin looked. Around the small kitchen, Charity sewing in the corner. Moses's toys scattered on the floor. Ezekiel's books stacked on the table. Simple poverty that had given him something wealth never could. I want to stay here. Help you save the farm. Watch the children grow up. That's not one of your choices. The harsh truth hung between them. Santos wouldn't stop. Don Cornelius wouldn't stop searching. The past had found them, and it demanded resolution. I could go back, Joaquin said slowly. Face Santos directly. Expose what he's done. He'll kill you before you get within a mile of your father. Then what? Father Torres stepped forward. There's something else. A debt your father mentioned. Something about Marcus Whitmore. Tempe's head snapped up. Her husband's name, spoken in connection with the Esperanza Empire. What debt? Don Cornelius wouldn't say. Just that he owed Marcus Whitmore more than money could repay. The priest's eyes moved between Tempe and Joaquin. Said if anything happened to him, the debt should be honored. Marcus had never mentioned knowing Don Cornelius. Never spoke of debts or favors or connections to powerful men. He'd been a simple farmer, struggling to make a life for his family. But Marcus had fought in the war. Came home with scars he wouldn't discuss, and nightmares that lasted years. Maybe there were stories he'd never told. I need to see those papers, Tempe said. Joaquin handed her the will. The language was dense legal terms that swam before her eyes. But one section caught her attention. A provision about honoring debts to fallen comrades. Can you read this part? Father Torres took the document, squinted at the relevant passage. His face went pale. What is it? Joaquin asked. Your father legally adopted Marcus Whitmore. Maid. him heir to a portion of the estate. The priest looked up at Tempe. Your children are Esperanza family. They have inheritance rights. The world tilted. Tempe gripped the table edge, legs suddenly unsteady. That's impossible. It's here in writing. Signed and witnessed. Father Torres set the papers down carefully. Don Cornelius adopted Marcus as his son. That makes his children legitimate heirs. Ezekiel, Charity, and Moses, not just the widows. Children anymore. Members of the most powerful family in the territory. Why? Tempe whispered. Marcus must have saved his life during the war. The old man never forgot debts like that. Joaquin stared at the papers, understanding dawning in. His eyes. Santos can't just eliminate witnesses anymore. He'd be killing legitimate family members. It changes everything, Father Torres agreed, but it also made them bigger targets. Santos wouldn't hesitate to kill Esperanza heirs if it served his purposes. The inheritance that should have protected them might seal their doom instead. Tempe looked at her children. Ezekiel's anger had faded into confusion. Charity watched the adults with growing understanding. Moses played with his carved horses, oblivious to the magnitude of what they'd learned. What do we do now? Joaquin folded the will carefully. We fight, all of us together. Against Santos? Against anyone who threatens this family. The word hung in the air between them. Family, not the Whitmores and their guest. Not the widow and her children plus a stranger. Family, bound by more than blood or law or circumstance. Outside, the first drops of rain struck the windows. Storm coming, whether they were ready or not. Father Torres gathered his coat. I'll carry word to Don Cornelius. Tell him his son lives and needs help. How long will that take? 2 days to reach him. 2 days back with armed men. 4 days. They had to survive 4 days against Santos and whatever forces he brought to bear. Tempe looked around her. Small kitchen. The home Marcus had built, where she'd raised their children, where Joaquin had become part of their lives. Worth fighting for. Worth dying for, if necessary. Then we wait, she said. And we prepare. Thunder rolled across the prairie. The storm was coming for all of them. Miguel Santos arrived at dawn with 3 men and a smile that never reached his eyes. They rode slow, deliberate, horses' hooves marking time against packed earth. No hurry. Now they'd found their prey. Tempe watched from the kitchen window as they approached. Santos sat his horse with casual authority, silver concos catching early sunlight. Expensive hat, fine leather boots, guns worn easy at his hip, a man comfortable with power and violence. Joaquin. Her voice carried steady across the room. They're here. He rose from the table where he'd been reading his father's will one final time. The legal papers that made the Whitmore children heirs to an empire. The documents that might save them all or get them killed. The children gathered. Behind their mother. Ezekiel's jaw set hard, hands clenched. Charity held Moses close, protective instincts sharp as her mother's. Even the boy seemed to understand the weight of this moment. Santos dismounted with theatrical flourish. His boots struck the porch boards like hammer blows. Joaquin Speranza. His voice carried through the thin walls. I know you're in there, boy. Time we had ourselves a conversation. Joaquin moved to the door, hand resting on the latch. Behind him, Tempe stepped close enough to touch his shoulder. United front against whatever came next, the door opened. Santos stood framed in morning light, his smile widening at the sight of his quarry. Thought you were dead, nephew. Your father grieved something fierce. I'm sure he did. Lucky thing, surviving that fall. Most men wouldn't have walked away from a canyon like that. Santos' eyes swept past Joaquin to catalog the interior, taking inventory of witnesses, measuring threats. His gaze lingered on Tempe, dismissed the children as irrelevant. Hospitable folks, taking in a wounded stranger. Coarse hospitality can be dangerous when you don't know who you're helping. Tempe stepped into view. State your business, Mr. Santos, ma'am. Miguel Santos, Don Cornelius's business partner. He touched his hat brim in mock courtesy. Just here to collect family property. I'm not property. No, but you're causing considerable trouble. Your father's been turning the territory upside down looking for you. Hiring men, offering rewards. Expensive business, grief. Santos gestured to his companions. Hard-faced men with killer's eyes. The kind who'd shoot witnesses and sleep sound after. Now, I could take you back dead or alive. Don Cornelius don't much care which, long as he gets closure, but I'm a reasonable man. Willing to make a deal. He reached into his coat, withdrew. A folded document, legal papers, thick with official seals. Simple thing. You sign away any claim to your father's estate. I let these good people live quiet lives. You disappear permanent-like, and everybody wins. Joaquin studied the contract without reaching for it. Everybody except my father. Your father's an old man. Grief's eating him alive. Be a kindness, really, letting him think you died a hero instead of living as a disappointment. The insult hung in the air. Santa's smile never wavered. What about my cousins? Eduardo and Rafael. They disappoint you too. Accidents happen. Dangerous country out here. Man's got to be careful who he trusts. The threat was clear. Sign. Or join the family cemetery. Tempe felt Joaquin's tension through her fingertips. Every muscle coiled, ready for violence that would get them all killed. Santos' men had their hands near their guns, waiting for an excuse. How long do I have to decide? Sun's coming up. Decent folks are stirring. Don't want to conduct business. With an audience. Santos pulled out a pocket watch, checked the time with deliberate care. 1 hour, then we conclude our negotiations permanent-like. He remounted his horse, settled into the saddle with practiced ease. The kind of man who'd spent his life taking what he wanted through fear and force. 1 hour, nephew. Don't make me come looking. The riders withdrew to a low hill overlooking the homestead. Close enough to watch, far enough to avoid accurate rifle fire. Professional positioning. Joaquin closed the door, leaned against it. The weight of impossible choices pressed down on all of them. You have to sign, Ezekiel said quietly. It's the only way we survive this. He'll kill us anyway. Charity's voice carried adult understanding in a child's throat. Men like that don't leave witnesses. Tempe moved to the window, studied their captors through faded curtains. Santos sat his horse patient as death, confident in his power. He'd killed before, would kill again without hesitation. Maybe there's another way. Joaquin looked up from the contract. Hope and desperation warring in his eyes. Father Torres said your father adopted Marcus, made him family. Legal adoption, your children have inheritance rights. Tempe felt the pieces clicking together. A desperate gamble, but their only chance. Santos can't just eliminate heirs anymore. Not without bringing the law down on himself. Unless nobody knows they're heirs. Joaquin crossed to his father's will, spread the pages on their kitchen table. Legal language dense as winter fog, but the relevant passages clear enough. Here, Marcus Whitmore, adopted son. His children to receive equal inheritance with blood relations. He looked up at Tempe, understanding dawning. Santos doesn't know about the adoption. Thinks you're just witnesses to be silenced. But if word got out, if people knew the Whitmore children were legitimate Esperanza heirs, he couldn't touch you. Not without bringing suspicion on himself. The plan took shape between them. Dangerous, requiring perfect timing and considerable luck, but possible. I'll take the will to town. File it with the territorial court. Make the adoption public record. Santos won't let you leave. He won't stop a grieving widow from visiting her husband's grave. Not with witnesses watching. Tempe moved to her bedroom, began gathering what she'd need. The will, their few important papers, money saved for desperate times. This qualified. "Mama," Moses tugged at her skirt. "Where are you going?" She knelt beside her youngest, smoothed his hair with gentle fingers. 8 years old, and already learning that the world was full of dangers he couldn't understand. "To make sure we're safe, baby. To make sure nobody can hurt us anymore." Ezekiel appeared in the doorway. "I'm coming with you. You're staying here, protecting your brother and sister, Mama." "This isn't discussion, Ezekiel. Your family needs you here." She saw him struggle with the decision. 16 years old, feeling responsible for everyone's safety. The weight of manhood settling on shoulders still too young to carry it. How long? Few hours, maybe less if I can find Judge Morrison. Joaquin checked his father's papers one final time, made sure everything was in order. Legal documents. That could save them all or sign their death warrants. "Santos gives me 1 hour. If you're not back by then, you'll sign the contract. Give up your inheritance to buy time." "Yes." Tempe nodded. Acceptable sacrifice if it came to that. Better Joaquin alive and poor than dead and rich. She kissed her children goodbye. Charity's fierce hug, Moses' trusting embrace, Ezekiel's reluctant acceptance of the plan. Then Joaquin's hands on her shoulders, steady and warm. "Be careful. You, too." Outside, Santos and his men watched her harness the old mare to their rickety wagon. A widow visiting her husband's grave, nothing suspicious about that. She drove past them without acknowledgement, just another broken woman carrying grief too. The cemetery. But tucked inside her coat were papers that could change everything. Legal documents that transformed her children from victims into heirs, from powerless to protected. The gamble of their lives hidden in a grieving widow's morning visit to the dead. Behind her, the sun climbed higher. 1 hour becoming 50. Minutes, then 40. Time running out for all of them. Santos checked his watch again, smiled his cold smile, and waited for his moment to collect what he'd come for. The territorial courthouse sat like a fortress against the morning sky. Stone walls built to withstand prairie storms and human ambition. Tempe drove her wagon through streets already busy with commerce, dust rising from wheels and hooves. Judge Morrison's office occupied the second floor. She climbed worn stairs, legal documents pressed against her chest. Each step carried the weight of her children's future. The judge looked up from his desk as she entered. White hair, kind eyes, hands stained with ink from decades of legal work. "Mrs. Whitmore, unexpected to see you in town so early. Need to file some papers, Judge. Important ones." She spread Don Cornelius's will across his desk. The adoption papers that made her children heirs to an empire. Morrison's eyebrows rose as he read. "This is highly irregular. Don Cornelius Esperanza adopted your husband? During the war, Marcus saved his life, apparently." Morrison studied the documents with careful attention. Legal seals, witness signatures, everything properly executed. No question of authenticity. "These papers make your children legitimate heirs to the Esperanza estate." "Yes, sir. Considerable inheritance involved. Millions of dollars, thousands of acres." He looked up at her. "You understand what this means?" Tempe thought of Santos waiting at her homestead. Gun-toting men with killer's eyes, threatening her family. "Means my children are protected now, legal family members." Morrison nodded slowly. "I'll file these immediately. Make them part of the public record." While the judge prepared the paperwork, Tempe moved to the window. Her homestead lay miles away, but she could feel the tension stretching across the distance. Santos growing impatient. Joaquin running out of time. "There's something else," she said. "Miguel Santos is at my home right now. Threatening my family. Morrison's pen stilled. Santos, Don Cornelius's business partner, claims to be. Says Joaquin Esperanza. Is dead, wants to inherit everything himself. The judge set down his pen, understanding dawning across his weathered features. Joaquin Esperanza is alive? Been staying with us. Santos shot him, left him to die. We nursed him back to health. Morrison stood, moved to his coat hanging on. A peg. I need to wire the territorial marshal. Santos has been asking questions, making threats. If he's trying to eliminate heirs, no time for that. He gave Joaquin 1 hour to sign away his inheritance or die. The judge checked his pocket. Watch. How long ago? 30 minutes. Morrison grabbed his hat, headed for the door. Come on, we're going back to your place. Judge, Santos has armed men. This isn't your fight. Like hell it isn't. Murder conspiracy in my territory makes it my business. They descended the courthouse steps together. Morrison's buggy waited. Outside, a fine black mare in the traces. Faster than Tempe's old wagon, but still too slow to beat the deadline. Drive hard, she told him. My children are there. The miles passed in clouds of dust and flying gravel. Morrison's mare strained. Against the harness, sensing urgency in the reins. Tempe gripped the seat, watching the sun climb higher. 20 minutes left, maybe 15. Behind them, dust clouds rose on the horizon. Other riders moving fast toward the same destination. Tempe couldn't tell if they were friends or more of Santos's men. The homestead appeared ahead, small and vulnerable against the vast prairie. Santos and his riders still held position on the overlooking hill. Joaquin's deadline approaching with mathematical precision. Morrison pulled up in the yard, his mare lathered and blowing. Tempe jumped down. Before the wheels stopped turning, Santos spurred his horse down the hill, casual. Confidence in every movement. Time was up, and he held all the cards, or thought he did. Judge Morrison. Santos touched his hat brim. Didn't expect to see you out here. Filing legal papers, Santos. Seems the Whitmore children have some interesting inheritance rights. Santos's smile faltered slightly. Not sure what you mean. Morrison pulled out copies of the adoption documents. Don Cornelius legally adopted Marcus Whitmore during the war. Makes his children legitimate Esperanza heirs. The color drained from Santos's face. His carefully constructed plan crumbling in real time. That's impossible. Filed and witnessed. Public record now. Morrison's voice carried judicial authority. Any harm that comes to these children brings the full weight of territorial law down on whoever's responsible. Santos's hand moved toward his gun, professional instinct overriding legal caution. Careful, Miguel. The new voice came from behind them. Don Cornelius Esperanza sat his horse at the property line, flanked by 6 armed riders. The old man's face carved from granite, eyes burning with paternal fury. Father. Joaquin stepped out of the house, his own relief visible. You're early. Father Torres rode hard to find me, said my son needed help. Don Cornelius dismounted. Moved toward Joaquin with measured steps. Also said someone's been killing my family. Santos backed his horse away, calculating odds that had suddenly turned against him. 7 guns against his 3. Judge Morrison as witness. Legal documents that destroyed his inheritance scheme. Don Cornelius, good to see you well. Is it, Miguel? Because I've been thinking about those accidents. Eduardo's fall, Rafael's illness. Mighty convenient timing. Santos's mask finally slipped. The genial business partner disappeared, replaced by something cold and desperate. You always were too trusting, old man. Too willing to share what you built. His hand dropped to his gun. Fast draw, professional smooth. But Don Cornelius's riders were faster. 3 shots rang out simultaneously. Santos jerked in his saddle, then toppled to the ground. His men raised their hands, smart enough to recognize superior firepower. Don Cornelius walked to his fallen partner, looked down without emotion. Should have been satisfied with what I gave you, Miguel. Greed's a poison that kills the soul. He turned to Joaquin, father and son studying each other across years of separation. You look well, boy. These folks been taking care of you? Better than I deserved. Don Cornelius's gaze moved to Tempe, then to her children emerging from the house. Ezekiel protective, Charity curious, Moses hiding behind his sister's skirts. These would be Marcus Whitmore's children. Yes, sir. The old man's face softened. Marcus was a good man. Saved my life at Antietam, never asked for anything in return. He looked at the children with something approaching wonder. His son has his eyes, strong eyes. Moses stepped forward, child's courage overcoming shyness. Are you really our grandfather? Don Cornelius knelt stiffly, bringing himself to the boy's level. Legal papers say I am. What do you think about that? I think grandfathers should give hugs. The old man's laugh rumbled deep in his chest. He gathered Moses close, then opened his arms to include Charity and Ezekiel. 3 generations bound by law and loss and unexpected love. Judge Morrison cleared his throat. Still need to deal with Santos's men and file charges for the conspiracy. Handle it however you see fit, Judge. The Esperanza family stands behind your decisions. Don Cornelius rose, still holding Moses's hand. His eyes found Tempe's. Marcus's widow. You've raised fine children. Did my best. Better than that. You saved my son's life, gave him a family when he needed one most. He paused, weighing his words carefully. There's a house on the ranch. Big enough for growing families. Good schools nearby, if you're interested. Tempe looked at Joaquin, saw hope and uncertainty warring in his expression. A future neither of them had dared imagine. We'll consider it. Take your time. Family decisions shouldn't be rushed. The old man remounted his horse, gathered his riders. Santos's body draped across a spare horse. Justice served on the Kansas prairie. Joaquin, you coming home? Joaquin looked at the small house where he'd learned what family meant. At the woman who'd chosen mercy over safety. The children who'd accepted him without question. I am home, Father. But I'd like you to visit. Get to know your grandchildren. Don Cornelius smiled, the first genuine expression Tempe had seen from him. I'd like that too, son. I'd like that very much. He rode away with his men, leaving the Whitmore family standing in their yard, changed forever, but still themselves, still together. The storm had passed. The sun shone bright on new possibilities. 6 months later, the Whitmore family gathered around a dining table that could seat 12. Solid oak, crafted by artisans who understood the difference between furniture and heirlooms. Sunlight streamed through windows that didn't rattle in the wind. The new house sat on a gentle rise overlooking their original homestead. Tempe had insisted on keeping the old place visible. Reminder of where they'd come from, anchor against the vertigo of sudden wealth. Christmas morning arrived with snow dusting the prairie, transforming the landscape into something pristine and hopeful. The kind of beauty that made you believe in fresh starts. Ezekiel stood before the fireplace, reading aloud from his acceptance letter to the University of Colorado. Engineering program, full scholarship unnecessary now but earned through his own merit. His voice carried pride and disbelief in equal measure. Professor says I have exceptional mathematical intuition. He folded the letter carefully. Wants me to consider advanced studies in bridge construction. Don Cornelius nodded from his chair by the fire. The old man had aged visibly in the months since Santos's death, but his eyes still burned with fierce intelligence. Bridges connect things that seemed impossible to join. Good work for a man who understands bringing people together. Charity burst through the front door, snow melting on her coat. She'd been in the barn since dawn, working with the horses that had become her specialty. At 13, she commanded respect from ranch hands twice her age. The new mare's ready for saddle training. Tommy says she's got the finest conformation he's ever seen. She moved with confidence now, no longer the uncertain girl who'd watched her mother struggle alone. The Esperanza name had opened doors, but her own skill kept them open. Moses played on the floor with an entire army of carved animals. Joaquin's latest creations, each one unique and detailed. The boy had grown taller, filled out, but his eyes still held that innocent wonder that made adults remember why they fought for the future. Tempe emerged from the kitchen, carrying a feast that would have seemed impossible a year ago. Turkey, ham, vegetables from their own garden, pies made with store-bought flour instead of careful rationing. But the abundance felt earned rather than given. She'd continued her work as a midwife, now serving families across 3 counties. The Esperanza name meant she could travel safely, but her reputation was built on skill and compassion. Dinners ready, they gathered around the table, an unlikely family bound by choice rather than blood. Don Cornelius at the head, Tempe at the foot, the children and Joaquin filling the spaces between. "Before we eat," Don Cornelius said, "I want to say something." His weathered hands gripped the table edge. A man who'd built an empire through force and cunning, now learning gentler lessons from unexpected teachers. "Year ago, I thought I'd lost everything that mattered. My son, my legacy, my purpose." His eyes moved around the table. "Turns out I was looking in the wrong places." He reached for Moses's small hand, squeezed it gently. "Family isn't about blood or money or land. It's about the people who choose to stand with you when everything falls apart." Joaquin cleared his throat. "Speaking of family." He reached into his coat, withdrew a small velvet box. The gesture sent ripples of excitement around the table. "Tempe." His voice carried nervous formality. "I know we've talked about this. About what we mean to each other, what we want to build together." She watched him with steady eyes. They'd courted properly despite living in the same house, respect and patience threading through their growing love. "I'm asking if you'll marry me, not because circumstances threw us together, but because I can't imagine a future without you in it." The ring was simple, elegant, chosen for her rather than for display. Tempe took it with hands that had delivered babies, tended wounds, fought for her children's survival. Yes, the word carried weight beyond its simplicity. Yes to partnership, yes to blended families, yes to the possibility that love could grow from the strangest soil. Don Cornelius raised his glass of cider. "To family. The kind we're born into and the kind we choose." They drank together, bound by shared trials and unexpected grace. After dinner, they walked to the schoolhouse Tempe had built on the ranch. 1 room, but spacious and well-equipped. Children of all backgrounds learned together under her guidance, radical equality disguised as simple education. "Enrollment's up to 37, she told Don Cornelius as they watched Moses chase his cousins through the snow. "Parents are coming from as far as Dodge City." "Good. Children need to learn that differences make us stronger, not weaker." The old man had changed, shaped by his new family's values. The Esperanza Ranch now paid fair wages, provided decent housing, treated workers with dignity regardless of their background. Marcus would be proud, Joaquin said quietly. They stood together in the falling snow, watching children play without regard for the boundaries that divided their parents. The future taking shape in small moments of joy and acceptance. "He is proud," Tempe replied. "Wherever he is, he's proud." Evening brought them back to the fire. Extended family sprawled in comfortable chairs. Don Cornelius carved a new toy for Moses while Charity read aloud from a book about horses. Ezekiel worked mathematical problems that would have challenged college professors. Joaquin and Tempe sat together on the sofa, her hand resting in his. The ring caught firelight, symbol of promises made and kept. You ever regret it? He asked. That night in the storm, choosing to help a stranger? Tempe considered the question. The struggle, the fear, the impossible choices that had led them here. No regrets, only gratitude. For what? For learning that sometimes the greatest miracles come disguised as the simplest choices. To help when we could walk away. To hope when everything seems lost. To love when it would be easier to fear. Outside, wind sang across the prairie, carrying the scent of snow and possibility. The storm that had brought them together was long past, but its gifts remained. A family forged in crisis, strengthened by choice, sustained by love, transcended every boundary society tried to impose. The fire crackled in the hearth. Voices murmured in comfortable conversation. Somewhere in the distance, a horse whinnied. Safe in warm stables. Don Cornelius looked around the room, taking inventory of his true wealth. Not the cattle or land or money, but the faces gathered in firelight. The children who called him grandfather. The woman who'd taught his son what family meant. The legacy that would outlast any empire built on force. Richest man in Kansas, he said quietly. And for the first time in his life, he meant it. The snow continued falling, blanketing the prairie in silence and grace. Inside the house, the family talked and laughed and planned for tomorrow. Outside, the wind carried their voices across the land, testament to the power of mercy and the miracle of second chances. In the morning, there would be work to do. The ranch to run, the school to teach, the future to build. But tonight, there was only this. The warmth of belonging, the security of love, the knowledge that sometimes the greatest fortunes come to those who choose compassion over safety. The stranger Tempe had saved in the storm was gone, replaced by a husband, a father, a man who'd found his place in the world. And the struggling widow who'd risked everything for a dying man had become something more. The heart of a family, the center of a community, the proof that kindness could indeed change everything. And that is all to the story, for now. Please, let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. And if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you, it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.